welcome back to Skyrocket. And of course, I'm joined by Jose again, and he is fresh off an amazing vacation. So welcome back.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it was an amazing vacation. My wife and I went to Europe on a cruise, and it was wonderful. Lots of people, lots of hot weather, but we had a really good time and happy to be back and sitting here with you.
Good. Glad to have you back. Well, today we're going to tackle a question. Is how do you really know what your real problem is? The real issue, the real obstacle. So many businesses or even individuals, they come to you with a problem, say, I need this solved. But even from the world of counseling, with the individuals I came from, someone would come to me with this problem, and as soon as it came out of their mouth, I knew this is probably not their real problem. And so today we're going to look at how do we move from seeing the fruit or the symptoms to get right down to the root. And Jose, where have you seen some of this yourself?
Chris, it's such a great point because, I like to talk about, when I talk to brokers or even when I talk to salespeople, you really have to understand what your problem is, assess it, admit it, because if you don't do those things, you're never going to get to where you need to be. So, for example, with a broker, they may say, well, I'm having a hard time recruiting agents. All right. Well, why is that? Right. It could be because you don't have the right compensation plan. It could be because you don't have the right technology. It could be because you have a bad reputation. It could be any number of things. Right. But if the person does not kind of do that self-assessment and understand, what their issue is, how are they going to solve that problem, to your point? And I think, again, I'm giving that as an example of a broker, but you talk about a salesperson, same thing. They're not closing deals. Well, what's your sales process? What kind of questions are you asking? How are you dressed? How are you presenting, right? And so it takes, listen, it's scary for some people, right, to admit that they have these issues, but until you address those issues, you're never going to get to the root of the problem.
Exactly. I love how you kept asking the why question after why question. In the area of manufacturing and lean process, they refer to this as the 5 whys. And there's really nothing magical about the number 5, but what it does do for you, by the time you get to that 5th why, you're getting a lot closer to the real reason. It's kind of like, why did the machine stop? You have to answer that question. Someone can say, well, the fuse blew. Well, why did the fuse blow? Well, because it was overloaded. Why was it overloaded? Because the bearing didn't have enough lubricant. Why didn't it have enough lubricant? Because the pump didn't give it enough. Why didn't the pump give it enough? Because the pump is messed up. Why is the pump messed up and old and rattly? Because metal shavings got into it. Finally, we get to the place. You don't need a new pump. You need to put just a small strainer before the metal parts can get into the lubricant. And so it's very simple things like that. But rather than replacing that pump over and over again, you say, what's the real problem that's going to really solve the problem? Sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it's difficult. But I think what we face here is when you ask clients this question, and we have some techniques by which we can get this information out of them, but it does require some courage and honesty in those moments.
Well, as you know, my expertise and my passion is training and coaching salespeople. And I will tell you, the best salespeople ask the most questions. So if you read the book Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, he interviewed, I think, 15,000 salespeople and found that the best salespeople are asking questions and listening 85% of the time. They're not talking 85% of the time. So that's where when I see a salesperson ask, or talking, spewing how great their product is and spewing how great they are and all that stuff, the customer is just going to turn off. But if you ask questions that get people thinking, like what you just went through with the factory, or what I went through with the broker example, you're a trusted advisor now. You're a consultant. You're not a salesperson trying to hammer someone to make a decision, right? Without really understanding what their problems are. And I think that people really appreciate that.
Yeah. I know in my world of training, too often we hear there's a little bit of an issue and want to create a course and throw a course at it. And sometimes it has nothing to do with, if you can pinpoint, it could just simply be 2 or 3 people that just need a little bit of coaching, maybe one person that just needs a conversation. And so that's why it's so important to get to those root issues, because it really allows you to target what really needs to happen.
And I think also, you mentioned it, and I did also, it takes, it's scary, but you have to face whatever your weakness is. And if your weakness is you're not asking enough questions, then you need to step back and you need to understand, why you're not succeeding because of that. and then figure out a way, whether it's being coached by someone like myself or like you, or reading a book, or for listening to yourself. When I started out selling, I would record myself so that I could see what I was saying. And I was so disgusted, by some of the things that came out of my mouth back when I was in my 20s. I just like, oh my God, no wonder I can't close a deal. Look at the stupid stuff I'm saying. But if you don't have the self-awareness to do that, you're never going to find that out.
Yeah, that self-awareness causes the right kind of urgency. Because I'm sure if Jose and I met with you, we could probably come up with this might be your problem. But until you say it's your problem, until you own it,
Yeah.
you're never going to do anything about it. And so no one wants to solve my problem or Jose's problem. It's solving your problem. That's why asking those questions is so important, isn't it? Because they have to answer the problem. But that self-awareness and honesty it can be very difficult to come by.
Well, I like to talk about, which also comes from spin selling, the idea of implicit needs versus explicit needs. An implicit need is, yeah, I'm not closing enough deals. I know I could be better, or whatever. But until you do that self-assessment, right, you're not going to know what those issues really are. And once you do, then that urgency, as you said, comes to play. That implicit need, which is, I got it in the back of my head, I know I've got this issue, turns into an explicit need, which means I've got this issue and I've got to solve this issue, and hopefully I have a path now to do it. So again, whether you're the salesperson trying to become a better salesperson, or you're a business person trying to have a better business, or whatever the situation is, you have to take that implicit need, do the self-awareness, ask yourself those questions, and turn that into an explicit need before you are going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, and it's about that specificity as well. Just saying, I wish I could do this better, or just mention X as just a general category. It really is trying to drill down and say what specifically is happening here and get explicit about that. And something I know that you do as well, maybe you can talk to this, is once you do present that need and that urgency, part of that urgency is created not only by identifying the real problem, but then asking the question, what's going to happen if you don't take care of that problem?
I call that an implication question, Chris. And then I know this session is not about spin selling, but spin selling stands for situation questions, problem questions, implication questions, and need payoff questions. And what you're alluding to there is an implication question, which is something that is critical to me. The most important question you can ever ask somebody is, when you identify what their problem is, then be able to show them the implication of not solving that problem. So going back to the real estate example, if you're a broker, for example, and I talked about earlier, having a hard time recruiting. All right, well, what's the implication of not recruiting more agents? Well, I'm not going to make as much money as I need to make. And so now you think about a broker, maybe an older broker, who's thinking about retiring and selling their business, 3, 4, 5 years from now, and they need X amount of money to sell their business, right? Well, if you don't start figuring out how to solve your recruiting issue, and you don't do the things you need to do, you're never going to get the amount of money that you're looking for 3 to 5 years from now. And that's something that really gets people thinking about it, right? Because if they had this dream that they're going to retire at 65, let's make up a number, and you're showing them that they're not going to be able to get there because they're not solving their problem today, now that becomes their issue. Okay, so now it becomes real. And it's not just, hey, buy this product from me or buy this service from me.
Right.
You have to solve this problem if you're going to meet your needs. And there's huge implications if you don't.
Absolutely. I think we can wrap up a little bit as we think about leadership in this way, because leaders, it really has to begin with leaders being willing to have that kind of courage to really find what their real problem is, know the implications, and move on it. I think you and I have been around the block long enough to know that the person with the position or the person with the most money invested in that particular business does not mean that they are just a natural leader. It takes work. And sometimes you find yourself in that position. It's like, wait a second, I've just been given a position. Or it's kind of like you have a teacher who also becomes a dean. Well, being a dean and teaching are two very different things. Being a salesman and being a broker are two different things. And all of a sudden, when you're in leadership, it becomes even more incumbent upon us to say, I need to take the time, find ways, and lead by that example. That will give a lot of relief to everybody working with you and for you, where they realize it is good and it is right to go ahead and be courageous enough, to be vulnerable enough, to go ahead and see what is my real issue. And sometimes it could be business acumen. Sometimes it could be relational. You just don't know how to get along with people as well as you think you do. And maybe it's some emotional intelligence issue, but let it begin right at the top and set an example for those working with and for you.
Well, and you're, that side of it is totally spot on. When I talk to salespeople about, this whole idea of asking questions and getting to the why and all the things that we've been talking about, you also have to earn the right. You can't go in to somebody's office and start, giving them the implications of not solving their problems when you really haven't earned the right to do that. You're just going to get kicked out of that office, right? So you have to build up to that. And once you build up to that and you establish that trust and you've earned the right to then ask a really hard question that takes guts, honestly. I mean, when I started doing this stuff years ago, and I was being coached by the person that taught me all these things, I was like, how do I ask that question? I mean, it sounds like it's pretty harsh. Yeah. But I got to tell you something. I asked, over time, once I got the confidence to be able to do this, some of the harshest questions that you would never think you'd be able to ask, but people would thank you later for asking that question. Yeah. People would thank me later for making them think about this in a way that they had never really given time to think about it, or maybe had the courage to think about. And I, through, again, this process, put them in that position to help them really understand where they were, because I had earned the right to do so.
Right. And that's where that listening comes in. After you pose that really hard question, be prepared to listen. You don't come in judgment. You don't come with an answer for them. Sometimes you can ease that hard question by saying, I'm just here to listen. I'm here to help you work through that and let you talk. And I'll be a listening ear the entire time. So great. Thank you again for the talk, Jose, and taking the time to say what's really our problem. It does take courage. But anything you want to close with?
I would just encourage anybody listening to Chris and I to really sit down and think about what we're saying and apply it. It doesn't matter if you're in C-suite, if you're a salesperson, I don't care. This applies to anything, right? And to really think about, are you really asking those questions? Are you really getting to the why? And be honest with yourself, right? Because if you do that, I think you're going to learn certainly things about yourself, but it's going to make you a better leader, better salesperson, and just in general, put you in a position to be more successful, which is what this whole series is about anyway. Absolutely.
We're going to put our contact information up in just a second. Again, if you want to contact us, if there's a particular topic you want us to talk about, we'd love to try to tackle that for you. If you'd like to somehow make an appointment, an initial maybe meeting with us with something, maybe you would like, how can I find out what my problem is? We'd love to begin helping you with that kind of stuff. Just let us know. We see what we can arrange. Again, thanks for joining us. On behalf of Jose and me, have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.